joined by Kraig Olason, Stormwater Program Manager with Whatcom County, and you'll have to explain the relationship with BB Warm, but Kraig has overseen stormwater, watershed management at Birch Bay for years, and will hopefully help us understand BB Warm's role today and what it could mean if Birch Bay chooses to incorporate.
Okay. Well, I'm not as exciting as the last to start with that. Just a background, if you're not familiar with BB Warm, it started back in 2006, really, or maybe even before. I started working with the program. It really wasn't a program at the time, in about 2007. And so, we initiated a fee, which is, collected as part of your annual or semi-annual tax payment. And it's based on impervious surface. And the reason that it was brought about was that a comprehensive stormwater plan was done in 2005 and adopted in 2006. It had identified all kinds of problems. And so the council decided to put in a stormwater district, and they used the subflood zone as the mechanism, and that is part of the countywide flood zone district, which we have. And so the funding is actually countywide flood money that we use. And we typically build the capital projects and hand them over to the county to take care of. And so BB Warm actually does planning. We go out and do some watershed master plans to kind of get better detail on what's going on in the neighborhoods. We've done 3 out here that covered all the coastline. We did another one in 2003, kind of following all the flooding we had in Birch Bay Village when we had that big storm in 2001. And that was a drainage study that basically looked at all that area that contributes to Birch Bay Village and also down Shin Tapper. And so those studies then become the basis for our projects that we do. We identify maintenance needs in the neighborhoods. We identify small works projects that need to be done, and also capital projects. We've done about a capital project a year for at least the last 12 or 14 years. We've spent over $5 million to date. I'm just doing this off my head, so I could be wrong, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. And as you all know, we did a raise of the rates last year. We did not raise them for 15 years, which probably wasn't a good idea. No. But again, part of the problem is over the last 4 or 5 years with inflation, our costs really jumped. And so we just couldn't make the progress that, the community wanted, and that we try to, comply with at least a project a year. We've got 20 years to go on them. So there's a lot of work out here. So Matt asked me about, well, what if we became a city out here? What would that mean? What would BB Warm do? Would they stay or not? And I'm not here to say what the council would do. I don't know what they'd say. What I did do is take a little look into the RCWs that established BB Warm as a subflood zone. And it doesn't prohibit a city from having a subflood zone, as a part of it. And again, if you think of the district that we have, it takes in the watershed. It goes all the way to Ferndale. And then Birch Point, which isn't exactly in the watershed, was brought in as a area that needed help as well, because they had a lot of slides on the upper banks out there. So and we've done several projects out there. So they're still part of this district. How you would work with us if you became a city, there's a lot of details to work out. If you incorporate areas that we built projects in, there would probably be some discussion about how you take it over. And if you're familiar with any of the annexation rules that we have actually interlocal agreements with each of the cities, when they take in a portion of their urban growth boundary, we look at what have we built out there, and there's basically an amortization requirement that if it's less than 10 years old, then there would be some sort of payback. Now, the other thing is we have a lot of infrastructure that we've built, a lot of it in the, short-term urban growth boundary or whatever that, whatever we call it down Birch Bay, that's not the long term. What do we call it?
UGA reserve or just UGA?
Just the UGAs,
Yeah.
which is the developable part. It's the one with the higher
Mhm.
zoning densities. So if there's, infrastructure in that, then there would be some requirement if you wanted to take it over and how old it was, what do we have to do with it. There's also, I didn't think about this till just now, but the berm, it was a pretty expensive project. And one of the things that BB Warm did, based on having done all the sub-watershed plans, was help define sizes of all those outfalls that they put into that berm. And so, again, there's some infrastructure. That'd be something to think about. How would that work with the county in terms of, let's say you want it in the city, you're gonna incorporate it. Unless there's some kind of an interlocal agreement, which I'm not sure what it would look like. It would be city infrastructure. So, yeah.
Now, would all those be in the event of the city annexing it? Or could it exist at its current?
Well, I don't know what happens if you incorporate, because I've always just worked with annexations, right? So when you go to incorporate, I guess that would be probably a topic that would be a big discussion. How would that work? And what do you want as a city? What is the county willing to do? Is it better to just leave, BB Warm as an entity that continues to work on projects? Some in your city, some in the areas outside of your city? That again is a question that we would have to address. If you're not familiar with BB Warm, we actually have an advisory committee. They meet quarterly now. Every quarter we have, similar to your meeting, where we have time for public comment. So if anybody's got a beef or they want something done or whatever, they can come in. We also do it online, so you can just log in if you want. And comment on our plans, comment on our projects, comment on your neighborhood drainage problems that you're extremely irritated about, which happens. And so that's another opportunity, I guess, to look at overlays in your potential, annexation or incorporation. How much do you want to do this? You're gonna have a fire district, could be the same thing. Sewer and water district kind of could be the same thing. So you may initially have a lot of interlocal agreements. And then kind of find your way along as you work towards maybe a more fully, functional city where you take on more of those things. So I don't think there's a roadmap that's clear for this process. I think the real question, is how well is the elected officials seeing this as a proposal? Are they supportive or not? I don't really know myself. I haven't really followed it that closely. But again, they're gonna be pretty critical in, not critical, but important in deciding, how this is gonna work out, what's best for the community and what's best for the county. And then is it a, immediate all at once thing, or is it a transitional thing?
Has anyone from CAI, the consultant group doing the feasibility study, reached out?
Yeah, I talked to one of their planners for quite a while, and we talked about a lot of this, because, so, it's a big question when you think about even maintenance of this stuff. I mean, some of these are pretty good sized systems. Some of them go off cliffs. I mean, there's some complexity to it. And, again, we're struggling, with funding as a county. And when you think about counties, they're really a rural service provider primarily. And urban services aren't, what our focus is. You might have noticed that. The bottom line is, we're not set up to manage cities. And we do have areas around Ferndale and around Bellingham, city of Bellingham, that are urbanized and out here. But our whole system, and we've got, 900 miles of roads and all of these larger, areas that don't require the kind of level of service that a city does. And so that's where there's sort of a mismatch, I think. So BB Warm is sort of brought in a higher level of service here because we do things like, these projects, but we also hire a person to run around Birch Point and make sure the systems are open and flowing during storm events, so there's less chance of, major slides based on overland flooding. So
We need it for sure.
yeah.
So you are a department of the county?
We're a division of Public Works,
Okay.
and we're out of the Public Works Department. We are funded through the countywide flood tax partially, and we're also funded by the fees that are collected in the BB Warm district.
On our property taxes.
On
is
the
a
property
line item.
taxes.
Do you know what the breakdown of that is?
For,
The breakdown of what you get from the county and then the fees you get from us?
well, what the county funding through the countywide flood zone covers me, secretary, and some budgeting that we have, about 800 to 900,000. We do some, studies with it. It's not just for BB Warm. We have Lake Watcom, which is another area that we do a lot of work in. In this areas that are in the NPDES area, which are basically those areas that are in the urban growth areas of Bellingham and Ferndale. And so in Birch Bay, so we have overlaps with our utilities with the NPDES area. Some areas we don't have overlaps, some areas in Ferndale and Bellingham. So we do have road funds for that. We have like 5 funding sources for the work that we do out of our program. We in Lake Watcom, we have funding through REIT, the real estate excise tax, and our utility, and grants sometimes that do our capital projects. And we do water quality sampling, we do inspection of all the catch basins and the drainage systems.
We appreciate that. Those of us that have catch basins.
Yes.
Because I've
And
seen
yours
them.
works pretty well, I think.
Yes, well, it's because you guys are keeping it clean, but I have seen them in years past where they're like fountains in your
Yeah.
front yard.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
water just shooting straight up in the air when we have a king tide and then the
Yeah.
water's coming from the upland.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been very exciting.
Actually, more than our whole area is still that,
Yeah.
because I've been to the meetings and I can't get anybody to work on getting those.
Well, we struggle with areas that are tidally flooded.
Yeah.
That's really hard. I mean, we have an area along Wooldridge there.
That's what I'm speaking.
Is that
of.
where you live? We're gonna actually put some wells in this year to just check the groundwater there.
Okay,
So we can kind of get a sense of just how high it is.
When it comes from 2 directions.
Yeah,
really.
well, when the tides are up and you get a good flood, a good flush out of Terrell Creek,
Yeah.
I've seen that thing fill up in like 2 hours.
oh,
It's amazing.
yeah, I live right on Cheryl Creek.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ours, we have the big tube out in front on the drive. And I've only seen once where it backed up with the new system. And I was looking out the window when we had a king tide and everything was great, new berm, everything. And I look out and we're getting water in the front yard. And I'm like, okay, now what's going on? And I looked out at our catch basin, and you guys, you would not believe the size of these catch
Yeah.
basins. I mean, they're huge when they went in the ground. I couldn't believe it.
yeah.
And here comes seaweed and whatever up out of the catch basin, because at the highest part of the tide, the pressure must have been on the outflow, so it came in.
It's not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
Right on that one. But it was so interesting to watch
Yeah.
because it just started up like this, seaweed
Yeah.
and the whole 9 yards. So I knew it was coming from the bay. So you know what I did? I'm gonna tell you what I did, but you probably won't laugh. I had sandbags.
Yep.
And I ran in the garage and got 3 sandbags and put them on top. And so I just sent it up to the next.
Seaweed.
Yeah. Well, we had 3, we put, at the outfalls, we put on these grates. And the reason we put the grates on really is to keep the kids out.
Mhm.
They don't really need grates on the outfall. Yeah. So then what happened was, when they put in the new berm, how did this go? They ended up putting grates on everything. And so now we have grates on, I think, almost all of them.
Yeah.
But what happened was it got this big rain and all the stuff came down and it stuffed the grates full so they wouldn't, there's no outfall. So it blew out one project we just finished. And that's probably what backed you up. So we take them off every fall. Figure when it's about too cold to go up there. We're hoping for more barnacles because they get inside there and they're not very comfortable. So we're hoping that that's gonna be a deterrent, but as long as we remember to take the grates off, and if they're still on, there's the one on Beachway and the one on Cedar. And I think there's one in that park area in between. Those 3 and the one on Cottonwood have to come off. So if you see those on in November, call me. Because we don't want that.
Excellent.
So,
Is anybody gonna talk about, the
Birch
blade
Point?
swap?
Birch Point
The
swap.
Birch Point. I noticed, I got a map out and I just did not realize that BB Warm, the ratepayers go all the way up around, the Simiamu area.
mhm.
Is that
Now,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, so
and
what
that is that is the watershed up there. The characteristic watershed study.
Yeah.
That
Right.
is the watershed
Yeah, we
line up there.
included that.
Yeah. So we are paying, BB Warm is paying for water coming out of Simiamu, right? Because the water that comes over, you did the big drainage project.
Yes,
And where the water was just shooting over the bluff and erosion of the bluff and everything, and you did that project. That's coming off, going across the, what they want to use for their urban reserve now, take in for their urban reserve. So what happens there? We're paying, we've already paid out of BB Warm for that,
would be the
project.
same thing if, let's say they get that area.
Mhm.
And then when they go to annex, nothing changes till they annex it,
Okay,
right? And when they annex it, then we would go back and say, okay, what did we build in there? And is that, I can't remember if it's 10 years, I think it might be more than that now, they just changed it, but within 10 years or so of building it, there would be a residual they'd have to pay out.
what about future? For example, Simiamu now, or let's just say all of West Plain affects what comes down the slope into Birch Bay. It all drains down on
Right.
this. So there's a big question in my mind. Do they come in, do they come into BB Warm then and they all pay? Or do we just pay, when it starts to flood, then we have to build the projects up the hill?
Well, what we've talked about is whether or not we can get some sort of fee for their volume. We haven't done it yet. There's several projects proposed up there, whether they're built
The
in
cumulative.
any
effect.
time in the near future or not is yet to be seen, but that's a discussion that has to be, carried out because the question is what's fair, right?
Mhm.
And we dump water on Blaine too. I mean, the water goes where it went
Mhm.
and everybody takes each other's water. And there's a law that says, you gotta let the water go where it, always went. So you can't just turn it back around and send it back up the hill. But when you change the character of the area, then you've got some responsibility to minimize the impacts. And so That's why we did that study,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
we identified exactly. You know, to the extent you can, how much water would be generated and how it would flow. We did modeling of that. We showed that we have fairly large additions of water coming through the city. And if you think back to 21, when we had the flood, none of that was developed. You know, it was just pasture or scrub or whatever. So you start to develop that, and you have to consider that they're gonna put in, you know, some level of detention. Because they're gonna have to, you know, recreate a forested condition when they develop. So that means they have some level of detention for a certain period of time to meet a certain storm event. But if we have bigger storm events like we had, then we really have to consider, is that good enough? And so that's a big discussion that we're having now, that maybe 100-year event isn't enough for a stormwater pond. And they don't ever, you know, necessarily work as designed, I shouldn't say that, but there's maintenance that sometimes doesn't happen. If they're plugged up or they're not, you know, draining correctly, then they're gonna overtop. They're undersized, a lot of them are now because the old rules were different. So they're not as, you know, maybe they're 50 years or 25 events.
Well, to tag on to that, for example, the one that basically failed in 21 and took out Deer Trail, right? And I mean, that's from that development up the hill.
Well, that was a
Before there's
slide.
even anything new.
That was a slide on Deer Trail.
But
Because it was,
Inverness now coming in will be sending
Yes.
to Shintaf or Sub-Basin, they'll be sending their water down.
Yeah.
My concern is when we listened to the weatherman today, he said, what was it, 22? That was the big year of the atmospheric river. There was like 5 atmospheric rivers.
It was 21.
One right after
Yeah.
another, and the bullet point was Birch Bay, which is really not a usual thing. But he said that, I raised my hand, I said, well, like, is that the 100-year storm? And he said, that's 5 times, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's 5 times the 100,
That was-
that's just a few years ago.
It was 123% of the 100-year storm.
Yeah,
So that's kind of that's what we designed to in BB Warm, you know, to try to have that extra, because there's calculation error. You never get it right. You do your best. And then there's, you know, these events can be very concentrated. So they could be over that.
one of the things that bothered me, and I don't know whether this is something to be concerned about, but the Inverness HOA, it says in the document, will be responsible for taking care of the pond. Now, do you find that it would be better for the city? Because the city can just get rid of the liability by doing that and then give it to the HOA. And will do HOAs, I guess my question is, do HOAs really take care of ponds?
I think it depends, you know, it depends on how old the HOA systems are. I think the early ones, they were put in and people didn't even know what they were.
Yeah.
And so they were like, what is that thing out there? So we do a lot of work with people like that. A lot of times they're too small anyway. Sometimes we look at it and say, well, what we try to do is make them work as good as possible. But we're, you know, BB Warm is a entity. It's really a stormwater utility that has no regulatory authority, in the sense that we don't have the authority to go to a homeowner group that didn't take care of their system and say, you got 30 days to fix that. Or we're gonna write a ticket, or we're gonna do this or that. That's not what we do. What we do is a lot of times help fix them. And try to work with planning and other groups like, you know, the city, to consider the implications of their, you know, development impacts on people downstream.
Yeah.
Cause they've got people downstream too. There's a property, I think in Boundary Ridge. They've been battling a long time because there's water and it's undeveloped from the county. But it goes through and they put it into a regular drainage system and it overwhelms it. And so they're getting a lot of flooding and some, some high bank erosion. So, it really is important to work together on projects. And when you become a city, you need to work with Blaine and with the county to make sure that we're all in sync about what you have planned. And so that you don't have a bunch of squabbling and lawsuits and, the kind of things that happen when you're not paying attention. And so it is important, I think, to think about how do you connect with your neighbors. I think what Gary was talking about building community, it's not just your own, it's your area. And if you know people, it's easier to talk with them about how this could be a real problem and how there might be some better solutions for them. By working with us, I'm more than happy to work with anybody, developers included, to, achieve our goal of getting water safely to the bay. So we've talked with the people that have Inverness, and I thought we were gonna do a project, but apparently I was wrong. Although who knows, maybe we still will, but it is on our BB Warm list. I think it's for 2029. It's about a $2 million project.
Coming down Shintacker then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a question, though. Are they in that district and paying in those fees? Or they're in the city of Blaine? So BB Warm's gonna spend $2 million doing on a project caused by something in the city of Blaine that needs to be remedied for Birch
Well,
Bay.
it's bad already. That's the other thing. about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad already, and yet the project got approved by Blaine. And you're having to plan for the impacts. We know we're having to plan for the impacts. And $2 million of the fees that we're paying in are going to remedy something that's existing and caused by an area outside the fee area.
So here's one thing that will come up when you have this conversation.
Yeah.
So I go to the city and I say, you guys are gonna dump all this water on us. And they say, no, we're putting in retention ponds. And these ponds are going to, moderate the flows to meet pre-development flow rates. And we're gonna make them, and they weren't gonna, but we're gonna make them do 100-year storm events now. So that's great when it's a 100-year event, and they don't happen all that often. But if they start to creep up and maybe they're 20% bigger now, when that 100-year event is exceeded, everything's coming down the hill. And that's the problem we have. And so when we design projects, we usually, even before the big storm, we're adding 15 to 20% just because, systems don't work right. Sometimes people don't take care of them. A lot of ponds just get full and overflow and don't do anything.
Plugged.
Yep. And so when we're spending your money, we don't want to go back and redo it in 5 years because we were a little shy of the mark. So we overbuild usually and hope for the best because, the future is uncertain. And maintenance and, to make somebody do anything, and I've worked in planning for a long time, is hard. You got to get people to back you up. And that was actually the planner for the city of Blaine for a year. And we had an example, a house that was derelict. It was owned by Canadians that bought it as an investment. It was just the property, but it was bad and it was an eyesore and everybody was mad about it. So I said, all right, we'll get rid of it. So they were after me and I said, but I need a budget. I can't just go tear it down out of my pocket. So we wrote letters and they were willing to spend the money. And within 3 months, the thing was gone and we didn't pay a dime. But there's, the requirement that you have to be willing to take on the enforcement. Otherwise, your rules are worthless. And I think that's a huge problem with land use and stormwater stuff, because if you think about, if it ends up in court, you seem kind of like a silly thing for the judge when he's got murders and everything else to deal with. But in truth, it's the only way to keep your community from falling apart. And it doesn't take a lot of enforcement either to get people to realize that, no, it's serious. They're not gonna fool around. And then you don't get jerked around as much. So, a lesson for your incorporation file.
We're just over time, so I want to do kind of a last call for questions. I do have one, which is, shellfish is real important to me. I like to be able to go clamming, and it seems like we're open, or we don't have biotoxin warnings most of the time, whereas a lot of real developed places, you just never go clamming. Does BB worm do anything, or is that at all part of the mission, kind of with the water that we're draining into the bay, kind of caring about it from that perspective?
That's a really good question. When we first started working out here, we did it was a swale, treatment swale. It's just off Birch Bay Drive and just
Seaview.
is it
Sea-
Seaview?
Right above you.
Yeah,
you know that
I
one.
look at it all the time.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But when we did it, and we put in one filter cartridge ball up on Beachway. But Ecology said, well, we're not paying any money on that, because we were looking for grants. Because we don't have any best management practice that's approved for fecal coliform, and that's what we're looking at, or it's E. coli now, but it's the same basic thing. So we did a project in Lake Whatcom on Austin Street called the Geneva Swale, and we used this new media in that because it was getting old and we were going to replace it. And so one of the things we wanted to study was phosphorus, because that's a big deal for the lake, but also fecal, because I really wanted to get a system that would treat fecal that we could actually work with the state to get approved for, so we could show treatment out here, because we really can't get grants in Birch Bay because of that. So we did that, we sampled that as part of the project, and it did a really good job on fecal as well as phosphorus, but it also did really well on this 6 ppd tire dust treatment. And so we had King County come up and they're sampling another year. They did last year and this year again to see how well that's treatment's going to hold up. So there's better media now, and if we can leverage these studies to get some grants that would help us cost share on some of these projects, then we could be putting in more treatment before it goes into the bay, especially in neighborhoods. So you don't have tons of water coming through. You're treating very discrete areas, and so that's something that I think would really help down here. And just as an aside, BB Warm for a while was also a shellfish district. I don't know if you knew that. But that was when the shellfish areas were closed. And so we did a lot of work, education mostly, and we've been sampling these outfalls for 15 years, I think. So we've got pretty good data on the water quality, and it's up and down quite a bit. But, the bay's big, so it's not impacting, the shellfish like it was. So we're pretty happy with that, but I think, as you start to grow and get more people, especially with the tire dust, it's a tough one, and it's very toxic to fish. So finding the right mix of, treatment media and putting them in the right spots could do a lot of good and keep that bay alive.
Yeah, weren't the swales in the berm, the swales that come off the road, weren't those made to try and help drain that?
Well,
What's coming off the road?
I think they would be infiltrating, so they would limit just direct discharge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they had treatment media
Yeah.
in them.
But it wasn't just running right.
Right, straight
onto
into the bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and roads are another issue that we really need to concentrate on.
And didn't you put I heard a $30,000 filter at the top of Beachway?
Yes.
that fast flowing, whatever.
Well, it actually picked up the stuff coming down firm
Mhm,
mostly.
yeah,
We struggle a lot when we put treatment in, very large flows, because it dilutes the, effluent in the water to the point that a lot of the treatment media can't treat it. 'Cause it's just too diluted. So,
Any last questions? Well, we are a little over time, so only good ones. Well, thank you so much for coming. We
Thanks,
appreciate it.
very
This
much.
was super helpful.
good luck.
Thank you so much. It is,
Move to adjourn.
Caprice, thank you.
Second.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thanks for everybody.